Okay. Did anyone hear my intro, or did I just do that all for nobody? I think I did it for nobody. Okay. I'll start again, and then I'll introduce you, Dan. Sorry about that. Just a couple of technical difficulties. We're all human. So my name's Jody Whitfield McKay. I'm a customer success manager here at Blackbaud Canada. And before we begin today's session, I just wanted to note a couple of items. The sessions will be made available to view on demand. On the right-hand side of your screen, you'll find widgets for docs, chat, messages, and Q&A. And if you run into any audio or technical issues, the quickest way to get it working again is to refresh. We are very, very lucky to have my wonderful colleague and customer here today, Dan Korth, who is the Manager of Business Systems at the Canadian Red Cross using Blackbaud CRM. And he has been there since 2013 in a variety of roles. I get the pleasure of working with him and his team as their customer success manager here at Blackbaud Canada. And he's here today to talk us through adding a completed prospect plan for warm leads using Power Automate. Without further ado, I'm going to pass this on to you.
Thanks, Jody. And I know on the presentation, it does say that Nicholas Gower is going to be joining me today. He will be joining via MP4. We had a chance to pre-record his part of the session because he's actively involved in a training for today. So without further ado, I'm going to kind of jump straight into the completed warm outreach plan system and just basically talking through how we created this process for our relationship managers to easily track that warm outreach email that may not be an ask yet, but could easily turn into a prospecting plan and into a very good ask. So to start, I would like to acknowledge that I live, work, and garden in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people, part of the Wabanaki or Dawnland Confederacy. My relationship to this land is one of daily care, tending the soil, sharing in its abundance, and committing to take only what I need. I recognize that stewardship begins with listening to those who have nurtured this place for generations, and I will seek opportunities to learn from the Indigenous knowledge holders about reconciliation and reciprocal care. My actions, rooted in humility and attentiveness, are a small part of a much longer story of this land. And Jody, just let me know if anybody says they can't hear me or anything. Looking at the agenda for this one, we're going to start out with my friend Nick through the MP4 of his training tools chat. And it's just basically speaking a little bit about how our training team approaches working with folks who are new to BBCRM or new to the Canadian Red Cross in total. Oh, hey, Tylo, good to see you here. Next, I'll talk about why we use a ticket for this request instead of any other type of a request form. How it is, we'll show the build for the on-demand cloud flow, then the daily run child flow, which triggers a desktop flow, and then we schedule BBCRM to run the final parts of this queue. So lots of moving pieces, and unfortunately, I hope this isn't too jarring, but for the next part, I have to switch which screens I'm sharing so that I can bring Nick into the come on.
Looks like you're sharing Boldcast. Dan?
Yep, one moment while I fix that. It's always fun doing these as I try to go live. That's the one I wanted. Thanks, Jody.
Today, like I've been saying, the idea for this chat is, just to go through a little bit of how you look at training some of our not so technical users on using a program that is as technical and large as BBCRM or what we call Unity. So I've got a few questions up on the screen here, and we're just going to kind of start out with what tools do you consider most effective for engaging our users when you're doing something like an initial training?
Well, first, thank you very much for having me, Dan. For those who are listening in, I'm the Training and Quality Assurance Coordinator for the Philanthropies Marketing Operations team. In terms of tools, we incorporate a lot, like actually quite a wide variety of tools, which have all been adapted for online learning, which we needed to accommodate for employees because we have employees all across Canada in different time zones. So we use PowerPoint modules that are pre-prepared that cover all the general topics that we want to visit in BBCRM, which basically covers the theoretical stuff. Then we have online practical demonstrations during the training, which illustrate how that theoretical knowledge, if you want to call it that, is applied in practice. These are all conducted in the BBCRM training environment to allow for experimentation and learning from mistakes, which are important. In fact, I purposely make errors when filling out certain sections just to see if the participants will catch me, and if they do, I know they're listening. We have online practice exercises after I do the demonstration, just to give them the chance to apply the skills and the knowledge in a controlled environment, again, in the training area. So that encourages experimentation and embracing mistakes. We have extensively developed what we call WIDs, or working instructional documents, which are step-by-step guides documenting every step that we really need to take for a wide variety of scenarios. We have instructional videos for self-guided learning, and all of this is hosted on a philanthropy central hub, a SharePoint hub, so people can refer to it at any point when they need to, without having to go through official channels or making training requests or anything like that. So all of that, I think, puts together a really effective package for engaging and allowing people to learn on in a sort of controlled, supported environment, and also further their learning however they need.
So kind of following up along that same line of questions, do you find that those same tools are suitable for doing like a follow-up training or reinforcement training, or do you have a different preference for tools to do those follow-up trainings?
Great question. It kind of depends on how you want to define tools, but as I said, we've got that SharePoint site which houses everything and remains accessible at all times. It's along with the training environment. So we're very careful to make sure that everyone always has access to the training environment, even if they're 10 years into their role. Having that allows them to just test things out beforehand. And we also encourage employees to enroll in the basic training as often as they find helpful. The sessions delivered at the start of a person's role, like during the onboarding process, obviously can get very overwhelming because BBCRM is so vast. But we find that typically after 3 to 6 months, once they've settled in, a second round proves extremely beneficial. And so we have training sessions at the beginning of every month, assuming there's a new employee, and anyone who wants to join in is more than welcome to do that. So I find the initial training session helps demystify the software, making it feel less intimidating. And then the second follow-up session reinforces the key details, particularly for their role, They're much more tuned in, and it allows the participants to absorb any valuable pro tips that we give, and they make much more sense to them at that time. We also offer personalized training sessions that are available on request, either one-on-one coaching for a specific feature or topic, or a broader refresher tailored to a team's needs.
And I know I don't really have it on here, but in those follow-up sessions or those broader team sessions, are you finding that folks are coming in with new processes that weren't originally trained that they've just kind of made up on the go, or is that not something that we see within our user group?
I mean, there are certainly some creative ways of getting the information into BBCRM that we find from time to time. We do audits sometimes just to make sure things are in line with the way we need things to be entered. But generally speaking, people are pretty good because we've got those WIDs that they can refer to.
Awesome. So gonna go back to the questions we got on the sheet here with in your experience with BBCRM, which we call Unity, what challenges do users typically face in adapting to this software?
In general, I find that people adapt to BBCRM quite easily, especially if they have prior experience with customer relationship management software. The biggest challenge really lies in the vast scope of the program and determining where to record specific details that we need. The Canadian Red Cross is a sizable organization with multiple funding streams, each with its own distinct requirements. So we've got specific ways that we need things to be recorded, and accurately documenting these details can be complex. So it's remembering the little details that is the biggest challenge, because there are a lot. And we also have a broad and diverse donor base, which adds another layer of complexity and detail, particularly during emergency appeals, which is why I was so eager to collaborate with you on the completed Warm Outreach Plans project. So this launch is going to be a game changer for relationship managers, so I'm happy to be part of it.
Awesome. Yeah, it seemed like a kind of an interesting way for folks to be able to easily put that into the database, because it's often the same complaint that I hear, that it's so
Repetitive
complex. Yeah,
and complex,
repetitive
and
especially. And a lot of that's just within the way that we have those interaction attributes and things on the plan steps, just the way that we do that for some of our reporting. So gonna move back over to our last question with when you're working on training our users, especially those that come with experience in Razor's Edge, kind of thinking about anybody who might be looking at doing that migration from Blackbaud CRM or from Razor's Edge into Blackbaud CRM like we did a few years ago. What is the primary issue that a lot of those users seem to encounter?
Actually, the people I'm aware of who had Razor's Edge experience found BBCRM to be quite familiar. So the challenge becomes keeping them engaged during the training, because it's easy for them to assume, oh, it's basically the same thing, and tune out, actually missing key details. Switched from our previous database, Razor's Edge, which we transitioned away from in 2019, to BBCRM. And since then, I've heard an interesting analogy. It's a bit like switching from iPhone to Android in terms of smartphones. It's similar, it's familiar, but there's slightly different ways of doing it, and it takes a bit of adjustment.
Awesome. Yeah, I actually didn't hear that analogy from anybody yet, so that's a really great way to say it, especially for folks who are technical and kind of do these switches back and forth. Um, Right on, Nick. So that gets us through all of the four questions here, and I really appreciate your time and the expertise that you bring to this demonstration that we've got going on today. Uh, Before I let you go back into your regular day of planned activities, helping people out with learning how to do their jobs, is there any other comments or anything that you'd like to say to any of the technical users, makers, and creators out in Blackbaud community land?
Well, hello everyone, and thank you so much for this opportunity. It has been a wonderful working experience for me to work with you, Dan, and to see what goes on behind the scenes. And it's absolutely fascinating. I look forward to rolling out the completed warm outreach plans project and working with you on others. For those of you out there who are listening, thank you for your attention. And you know, we're looking forward to.
All right, hopefully my screen comes back up right in the right spot. Wow, you'd think I almost knew how to use a computer today, but looking at that recording, you might have noticed where I don't always do the greatest on recordings. Too many shiny objects and screens. All right. So continuing on to talk about, why we want to use a ticket. It's basically an easy way for us to be able to track that not only is the request in there, but are we working on it and is it complete? We also use some time tracking in our tickets to help us set a baseline for how long this is going to take and look at if we need to do additional automation in the future. Uh, Again, using a ticket instead of allowing the user to go directly to this Power Automate flow that does the work, it's easier for them. They can give us the information in their own words because we use a lot of code tables, and it has a tendency to make exceptions when we're trying to do imports without having access to actually look at those code tables. And what they're asking for here, or what the final product is we're going to be creating a prospect plan for everybody that they have reached out to that is marked as historic, and it's going to have one step, and that step is marked as completed, that they sent this email. Now, the idea behind this is, we've done this warm outreach. If we want to track how many people we've done this warm outreach for, great, that's already done. But when that person emails back, that's when the relationship manager is now able to go to that constituent record, turn this plan to active, and start working it as a prospect plan with some of the stuff already filled in and already created for them. So that's why we're looking at using a ticket, is just to kind of simplify that process and what our people are asking for. So let's get into the interesting spaces of our on-demand flow. The on-demand flow is just basically push a button to run or triggers on a button push. With this flow, it has a bunch of additional inputs that basically it just pops up that form to fill in, including a space where they'll have the ability to import a CSV file. It can be a UTF-8, it could be text, it can be anything. We just basically tell them in their training that this needs to be a text file that has something for a header. It can be constituent ID, it could be lookup ID. It doesn't matter what that header row is. And then each constituent that they have done the email for on each row. All of the other details come from the ticket, and they all end up being set as default, kind of like defaults that will go on every one of the rows. This is what the flow actually looks like in the building process. So it's a really long form where somebody's able to put in the narrative of the plan that they're setting. So for this, it could be something along the lines of, with the Manitoba wildfires that just started recently, we are sending out emails to people who live in Northern Ontario, Manitoba, and Saskatchewan to target them for this warm outreach program and just give them an easy way to be able to contact a relationship manager if they have questions about how to donate. The plan name can be whatever you want to show up as the plan name on the records. And again, this could work how you want it with some type of a nomenclature where you could do reporting based on how that plan name is built. This is where we get into those code tables where things get super fun with the Canadian Red Cross, because we have to be bilingual for the Quebec language laws. Therefore, every time that we do something like a plan type for foundation and grant, we also need to say subvention foundation. So, that's what our code table entry is. And if you only put foundation and grant, you are going to get an error. So that's why we kind of leave this over to our experts to do this for them. RM lookup ID, again, this is going to store which solicitor was the person who did this warm outreach, and they're going to be tagged as the primary manager on this prospect plan that was created. And an objective of, this is the same type of an idea, but this is just on the steps. So this can be the objective of the email saying that we want to give people that easy way to be able to contact us. But that would go on the step. And this final set of steps is here on the philanthropy support ticket. We use Jira. So we use the Power Automate connector to allow us to update the Jira ticket when it's put in correctly inside this field. So that's what the user has to do. And from there, that builds a JSON file that gets set in SharePoint, and then it waits until overnight. Now, every night we run another flow, and this, again, I kind of walked through all of this in the last and skipped over this slide. So, oops, one moment, there we go. Apologies. So from here, we do our on-demand flow, and files are saved to SharePoint for overnight. To optimize this for better on-demand use, in our current setup, our overnight flow would need to be run each time a new request comes in, so it doesn't really only run once a day. And that's just to fix that. We have the ability to make it so it would run multiple files. It's just as we learn. Also, in our current setup, only members with access to the SharePoint where we are saving these files is able to run the flow. We've since learned how to use run-only users on flows, which allows them to use our connections to save to the SharePoint. So, as we keep learning, everything's evolving, and I'll actually come back a little bit later to talk about some other evolutions that this has brought into for us. I got off topic a little bit before, trying to rope it back in. Every night, we have a set of flows that runs, and one of them is this daily flow that is going to check the folder where the JSON file is saved. And if there is any files saved, it's going to do something. If there is no file sitting in that folder, it just stops and moves on to the next flow that's going to happen in that process. So when it's triggered, it grabs the details, or it grabs the file from SharePoint. It triggers the desktop flow. It's also going to we use Azure Key Vault to get our SFTP credentials, everything along those lines, all getting passed on to our desktop flow. And then to look at the desktop flow itself, this is where things really start to kind of get smashed together for us. I always, in my desktop flows, try to add comments. It isn't required, but it's like any other coding. just a best practice to let folks know, here's some way that you can get back to what's going on. And for us, we will often, of course, I'm clicking on things I shouldn't be here. For us, we'll usually use our Jira tickets to be able to connect whatever work we're doing, either within BBCRM, with Power Automate, with Power BI, back to a single source of that kind of connects all of the different documentation pieces together. So this PS12340, it would be seen on all of my things in BBCRM, on all of my documents in Jira, in Confluence, and it is actually the Jira ticket that initiated the original request. First section here is just going out to the SharePoint, downloading the folders, and saving them to the local files. It's actually downloading both, and you can see here where it's downloading them as separate CSVs. And it downloads that using a file mask so that it is also able to put that into variables that it will then use to create the file headers and the files, the data rows themselves. So the first row is taken by using an index point. So here on the read from CSV file, you use that on the variable on file 0, so it's the first file in the row, and reads it into CSV2. This is one of the reasons that currently it will only work if I run one file at a time. So again, there's ways to fix this, but it works for now. And then from there, it creates a set of variables that is basically the header itself plus the constituent ID header, and smashes those two together as row 1 and saves it as a CSV file. So a lot of steps just to create a new header, but from there, we can now read each row from our constituent file and attach that to all of the fields that somebody filled out in that original Power Automate file. So in the end, what you end up with is a constituent ID in column A, and then each one of the pieces that we need for our BVDL import to match to that specific email that the person was sending out to their constituents. That's all coming from that file that is built based on the form at the first step, the on-demand flow. After the file is put together and each row is now saved into that CSV file and appended to that document, we use the credentials that were passed from our Azure Key Vault to then connect to the SFTP import source in Blackbaud CRM. If you go to imports, you can see there's a configure import sources. This is to that primary network space that allows BVDL to actually pick up the file and process it later on, which I'll show you in the steps that we have coming up. And again, throughout all of these steps, each point along the way, we're deleting any redundant copies of the data, because the end goal here is that we're only going to have the data that we need, and it will all live inside BBCRM. We don't need to have this living in different files all over the place. After the file has been uploaded to the SFTP for us and deleted all the extra copies, thanks, Jody, we're going to take the variable that was created for the PS ticket and just update our folks who are watching the ticket to say that, hey, we've done the request and the ticket is set to resolved. That way, if people have any outstanding issues or need anything else for it, they can definitely follow up with us right in the Jira ticket. So talking about the BBCRM side of things, and we're almost to the end of this long set of processes. First, for Brightfine, if you've worked with that, even working with like your regular out-of-the-box imports, this could probably be done something similar with a regular import, or in Razor's Edge with Importomatic, or the out-of-the-box imports through Razor's Edge. But for me, I found in Brightfine Data Link everything was hidden inside collection fields that were lower than the constituent table. So just continually drilling down until I found the fields that I was looking for. And sometimes that takes a little bit of experimentation. There is some great documentation out there. And this is one of the spots where I use a lot of AI, where I ask for its help to find these fields. I use defaults wherever possible to try and avoid data entry issues. However, with this particular process, we want a lot of those defaults to be set based on everything for that specific set of plans. So although we are using defaults for things like a warm prospect outreach plan or something like that, where we really started to use them was here in this last piece, where this is going to be a big change if people start to adopt it. They could be adding hundreds of new plans every appeal with it already being set as historic, and that could really disrupt the way that our pipeline calculations were created. So to make that work with our analytics team, I spoke with them. We just created right on that plan step that's being created an interaction attribute with a yes value, so that they can make a toggle that it's either yes or blank. And that way you can compare what it looked like historically versus what it looks like now just by using that toggle in the Power BI slicer. So again, automated file processing, we are using just a regular job task that runs daily and is scheduled to run every evening in Brightvine Data Link. For our staging and processing, we're set up to have staging and process run automatically. And you can see here where the file name continues to be completed step import.csv all the time from the default network path. And to be able to do that, where we're uploading a new file each day, we're just making sure that we archive that old file over to our archive folder, our completed steps folder. And that way the file gets moved over with a time date stamp that we can take a look at it if we need to revisit and do any troubleshooting on it. So that really brings me to what we're looking at as far as the actual processes. However, there are some really big spots that I can see that I want to improve these processes into the future. First of all, being that our users don't work in Jira. We work in Jira. So I want to start engaging them inside their email inboxes, which is possible just by changing the way that we do that first form. We want to, like I said, allow for multiple files to run each day. And that would also make it so that I could create these as a run-only process where the user would be able to do this themselves, basically from that end to end, where we can have them look at, these are the constituents I needed to send to, these and then these are the different fields that I want to have filled in. They submit it. Everything runs through, and over the next morning in their email, it says, hi, so-and-so, these many, this file was imported for you. It had this many records in it. All that type of work that we want to be able to do. Finally, I would love to be able to investigate the BBCRM connectors and Power Automate, or see if there are any other ways out there that I could actually have the job run from within Power Automate and start in Power Automate and get logging from BBCRM to have that whole lineage in one place. And I know I see there's a question here. Just going to double check. Got one more slide to get through, and then I will look at questions. All kinds of time left for questions, fortunately. This process, I've already started to use something very similar, or build something very similar that can be used in so many other ways. So with this type of a setup where it's basically Power BI is being queried by Power Automate, and that is being pushed over to Unity. One of the first ones that I did was a Power BI report that looks for pending plans, and then users inside that report can say, I want to see the pending plans that are for me. I want to see the ones that are for this province and for this constituent. And then they could export those plans, show which dates those pending steps are being completed on, and re-import that so they can massively update their pending steps. This allows the user to easily make those updates and add comments into it so that they can add their own flavor to what's going on, but it just gives that automation feel to be able to show the steps that are being completed. The other one that I've been working on is one that looks for when an opportunity has been set to accepted, that would create a pledge with a single payment for that opportunity and inform the user, this pledge has been created, please update if you need to do any changes for the installment schedule. And that brings me over to time to speak for questions. And I will hop over to the QA. All right, so I see there's the question about PA doing the input fields on the side like that. It's really great to use it that way. One moment here. Let me just open up a screen. But basically, when you create a new flow with a trigger that is push button, actually, I can, let me see if I can share the right screen here.
That's always the kicker.
All right, so I'm going to just jump into this one and edit. So when you're on the manually trigger a flow button, then under parameters, you have the ability, I believe it could be an advanced request, like piece in it, but all you have to do is just come down, you can add an input, tell it which type you want to use, and that will even let people upload files. They could do emails. I do a lot usually. I do more towards text, even when I'm doing numbers. Just it works well to be able to move it as a string into JSON. But if you were doing a set of Booleans that you wanted to do a calculation from, it would be better to do it as a set of numbers. Hopefully that answers that question. And you can also see here how it shows up as your variables. So under manually trigger a flow, it's usually going to hide in the see more area. That's where you're able to find most of them. I figured I would be speaking more quickly today than during my rehearsals, Jody. So even though I figured I would be pushing the time, it's nice to see we still had a bit of time for extra questions, and still lots of time here if folks have other questions.
Yeah, definitely feel free to put them in the chat or in the Q&A if there are questions. But if not, thank you, Dan. This was a really awesome session. I'm glad I was able to be here for that, see some friendly faces in the chat. And we have 4 minutes and 45 more seconds until we're kicked off. So if there's anybody else who would like to ask a question, feel free. Okay, I'm going to give it about 10 more seconds.
And, you know, folks, if you do decide to try to reach out to me or have any questions about today in the future, it's pretty easy. It's dan.korth@redcross.ca. You know, feel free. You can try to reach out. I will do my best to respond to everybody. It's, of course, coming into wildfire season, so we might be a little bit busy over the next few months, and hopefully we all have a great year.
You are very responsive on email, so I will give you that, even when you're busy. All right. Thank you so much, everybody, and I hope you have an awesome day, awesome remainder of your dev days, and we'll see you in the next one. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.